Okay, so I'm going to do a little video on the EGR valve, getting codes and sticking and soot build-up, because it's quite a common problem that pretty much everyone will be hitting at the age of these cars now on the n47 Diesel E84 BMW X1. So the EGR valve, as far as I understand, what it does is it recirculates exhaust gases back into the intake manifold to be burnt off. This is the EGR cooler, which I guess, I don't know, cools them down and does some stuff, right? So it's supposed to be better for the environment and more efficient running of the engine, maybe. But all of that gunk and build up can block up the EGR cooler. You will get a very specific code for that if that happens. And also it can gunk up the little mushroom valve. So if I show you my old one, if you look at how it works, that's the little mushroom valve. So that can get stuck. And it goes on this little slide arm. But another thing that can happen, and I think this is actually the underlying issue, is that over time this arm has worn, and you can actually see it there. It's no longer a nice, there's just ever so slight, like a millimetre or two that's worn there. And when I was looking at this against the new part, it was just getting stuck. Obviously I've lubed this to high heaven, so it's not doing it now, but what will happen is it will get stuck like that, stuck open. Which isn't good. Now, if you're getting a code for the EGR valve on your OBD scanner, one thing you can do first is actually to lubricate this mechanism. There is a little slide protector cap. Don't pry it this way, which I did first and broke that error. It actually slides over like that kind of thing, and you can pull it up. So you kind of want to put maybe a screwdriver flathead that way, and then it will pop off. And then you can put a bit of LM grease, is what I've used there, to lubricate that mechanism. The other thing that some people do is actually take, and I did this first, is take this off the car and clean the actual mushroom valve part. You can do it without taking it fully off the car. Which I'm going to show you the way to do it, because now you've got coolant hoses going in here, and then in here as well is one that connects around the I'll show you on this. So there's two connections. So yeah, you'd have that coolant hose there, and there's one around the back that we can't really see at the moment. Now what you can do is unscrew these two bolts, pull this out of the way. I've taken the I can't remember what the breather thing off, and I've also just taken out this air vent to get access, and you can actually, if you pull it up and then rotate that way, you just have to bear in mind I pulled all these out of the way and I unconnected that, just slides off to gain more access. You can just about, imagine it's like that, you can just about pull up and then rotate and just about slide it out. It's very tight, and what I had to do is slightly loosen here and pulled this back a bit, because you see how long that connector is. I actually got it just to the end so I wasn't going to leak coolant, and then you can do all of that. Just bear in mind that if you do pop it off by accident, you want to put it back on pretty quickly, and you will, if that does happen, introduce air into the line. So what you would need to do is bleed your system over here. The other thing is, I had this cleaned once and I saw that the arm was worn, so I replaced the whole EGR valve. I would always recommend getting OEM. I got a Delphi one. It isn't as nice. It's okay. It was like half the price, but in hindsight I would have paid double the price for the OEM part. But anyway, so in order to do that, you do have to disconnect the two coolant hoses, so you will inevitably lose a bit of coolant. But what I used is, I used a couple of really good quality little clamps and clamped off the coolant hoses when I had taken them off. You could potentially bung them off with something, You just don't want anything to break into them. That would be really bad, so I figured clamping it was the lesser of two evils. Or if you had a nice friend, you could get them to stick their thumbs on each end for a while, and then you can take it off and put it back on. And then what you would need is to replace, because this one has to be cut off, it's a bit like that, so you got to cut that off and replace it with a Jubilee. Jubilee clamps are nice, no cheap stuff. I think if you replace it with one of these, you have to use a special tool that crimps that, which I didn't have, so that's a Jubilee clamp there. Now when you do that, you will inevitably introduce some air into the coolant system. The N47 doesn't have a electronic water pump. The water pump is down here, if I remember correctly. Yeah, that's the water pump down there, and it's the turning of the crankshaft pulley that leads the serpentine belts, which turns the water pump, which moves coolant around the system. So you cannot bleed the system via some cars. They have an electronic pump, and you use an OBD scanner, and you can actually activate it, and then air bubbles come around without having the engine on. But you can't do that with this car. So if you lose a lot of coolant, you'll need to refill it using the vacuum method. It is in one of my other videos. But if you've only lost a little bit, what I did is there's methods online where they talk about putting your heating on in the car, start the car, get it warmed up, and then you bleed off this valve here with a rag around here. You don't want to get coolant everywhere, and then you get the bubbles out that way. So hopefully that helps people. But if you do want to do the cleaning method, just take this off first and then lubricate that arm. If you do want to clean the mushroom valve, you can take it off without fully disconnecting it from the coolant lines. But to be honest, if you're going to do that, just replace it. It will go again.